Hi, Bible Art Journalers. This month, October 2019, the Vacaville Bible Art Journaling Collaborative talked about the changing seasons. Fall has finally arrived in California. We're getting some cooler evenings, and our leaves are just starting to change. And we talked about changing seasons. We talked about how God carries us through tough seasons and how He moves us from one season to another when He has something greater for us, when He has something different that He wants us to do in order to get a blessing from Him. And we thought that making leaf prints would be a great reminder of how to be obedient in those seasonal changes and how to be grateful and how not to get stuck in a season when it's time for us to move along. So I've just been prepping this page here with a little background color. We are going to do a couple different kinds of leaf prints in this tutorial today. And so I hope you still have some green leaves, a few maybe hanging on somewhere nearby, if you want to give these a try. You might notice that these leaves have some paint already on them. It's because I was doing some test prints with them to find leaves that had a heavy enough veining in them so that it would work like a stamp to get the veins pressed out onto the page. And so I just did that on some scrap paper, and once I found leaves that made a nice imprint, those are the ones that I've gone ahead and repainted here so that I can stamp them on the page. So I'm applying a thin coat of paint on the underside of the leaf where the veins are heaviest. You want to look at your leaf, sometimes that's on the top. And then I'm just kind of pressing it down so that the paint is making it stick to the page. Then I'm going to cover it here with this paper towel and give it a nice even compression so that I can make sure it gets a nice even print. Now I'm just going to take this makeup cotton swab and I'm just going to roll it up really tight and use it like a sponge paintbrush. So if you have a sponge paintbrush or you want to just wad a paper towel, you just want something with a little bit of a textured surface, and I'm just dabbing on the paint lightly to kind of give a sponged effect, and I'm leaving a border around each leaf so that it kind of stands out off the page with that black border. Once I finish up with the white, I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of this blue to add another dimension, sort of like mist around the leaves. And then I'll add a third color. And you just want this to be light and airy. Now I'm going to add a little color to our leaves with some colored pencil. I have two different colors of green, and then I have a purple just to add in that tie into the purple that I used in the background. And I'm going between the heaviest vein lines and adding color and leaving those white veins to stand out. I love when I'm studying about something and then I come across a sermon or a teaching or something that goes along with what I've already been thinking about. And I feel like that's the Holy Spirit giving us the nod that we are on that frequency that He wants us to be listening to. So I already was feeling like I was in this very tough season lately. It was not a scary season, it was not a sad season, but it was a very stressful season. And I'm ready to move on from this season, but sometimes we're in a season of comfort where we are happy to just stay when we really should be stretching and moving on to something more. And I was already thinking about this, and then we had a guest speaker come to our church. His name was Daniel Floyd, and he's a pastor from Fredericksburg, Virginia. And he talked about this passage in 1 Samuel 16 where God came to Samuel and he said, "How much longer are you going to grieve?" He was grieving because Saul had not obeyed God and was being dethroned, and he had to be the one to go to Saul and tell him that. And he had told him that in the previous chapter, and in this chapter, he is still grieving, and God comes to him and says, "Why are you still grieving? How long are you going to grieve? You need to go." Or one version says, "You need to be on your way." Or, in other words, God was telling Samuel, it's time to move on, and it's time to go anoint a new king. And so, how often do we, like Samuel, spend time grieving about something, maybe moving on from it physically? He hadn't seen Saul since he had told him he was no longer going to be king, but yet he was still emotionally tied to the situation and not wanting to move on. So I'm just making myself a reminder note here not to be afraid to let go of one season in order to grab hold of what God has for us next. Now I've turned back to Joshua. chapter 23, verse 5, and this is one of the places where God promised the Israelites that they would be able to enter and have the promised land. It was a change of season for them. They were out of captivity, they were wandering the desert, and they were stuck because they weren't taking God at His word, being the promised land, that being past tense, that being something that already was meant to be. And so this was just another passage from the sermon notes that I had that reminds us not to get stuck in one season when God has promised us the next. Of course, if you've watched my channel before, you know I like taking some children's craft ideas and expanding them for us to still use in the Bible. And so I'm sure at some point in your elementary life you did leaf rubbings. And so that's what we're doing here. I'm just tucking this leaf under the page, and I'm going to make sure those vein sides are up, and then I'm going to use my pencil to rub the leaf. The only real tip I can give you here is that you want a firm pressure on part of the leaf so that you get a clear rubbing without the leaf moving on you. And then I just took the leaf out from under the page when I was done with the first one and added the second one to do a leaf rubbing. And then I just decided I would ombre out from there from red to orange to yellow until I had colored pencil all over the page. Once I had fairly even coverage of the pencil all over the page, I decided to go ahead and get out my stumps. These are like basically a paper pencil with no lead in it. It's just rolled paper. I have this little piece of sandpaper on this handle that I use to sharpen it if I need it for fine tips. But for something like this, the nice rounded edge is fine. I have one for each primary color, one for brown black, and one for pink, I think. And I just use them with this odorless mineral spirits, which I get in the fine arts department by like the oil paints. It is odorless, but it's not the best thing to breathe, so you want to use this in a well ventilated room. And I just dip my stump in this and then I use it to blend the colors. And the way this happens is the odorless mineral spirits dissolve the wax in the colored pencil. And it works better with a more artist grade colored pencil than, say, your basic Crayolas. But you'll have to just try it with the pencils you have before you go and invest in Prismacolors, which is what I am using here, which my Prismacolors I've had since college and they're still going strong and I use them a lot. So if you ever do decide that you like using colored pencil as a medium, they're a great investment. They will last you a long time and they have high quality pigment. So you can see I'm just dipping and blending. This will not bleed through the paper. When you first put it on the paper, it makes the paper of the Bible pages look very transparent, but don't be afraid. When it dries, the page returns to looking completely normal. And even on this page, this is the illuminated ESV version, and the back side of this page is all like this gold printing for the first page of the next book in the Bible, and it did not affect the printing on the page at all. I'm super speeding this up so that you don't have to watch me color or use the odorless mineral spirits for 20 minutes. I did not, however, use the odorless mineral spirits on the center of the leaves because it would just smooth out all our nice sharp lines from our rubbing. I did go back and forth between using the pencil and using the odorless mineral spirits until I got the intensity of color that I wanted on the page. So now for our last page, I went back a chapter to 1 Samuel 15, where Saul actually disobeyed during battle, and where God said to Samuel, you need to confront him about this and you need to demote him from being king. And Samuel spent time crying out to the Lord the night before he went and talked to him. And this is just a reminder to us that not every transition is marked with peace. Sometimes we have to do the hard thing during the transition. But on another note, here it stood out to me that we want those people in our lives who can be honest with us and it really hurts them to tell us the truth. We want those kind of mentors in our lives, the people who cry out to the Lord for us, and I have those people in my life and I'm grateful for that. And as hard as this was for Samuel to walk out and obey what God was asking him to do, he did do it. There's already writing here on the page, but we're going to be covering that up. And we're going to start by doing a very similar technique to the one we did on the facing page with a leaf print. And so I'm just sort of mixing these two colors to give a little variation, and then I'm going to lay this leaf on the page. But instead of just pulling it up immediately, I'm going to use a technique to get the color around it that's a little different from the facing page. So I was a little eager in getting started here, and I didn't set up for the second piece. So I'm going to do a little fancy finger work here, hold the leaf down, roll up my cotton swab, and I'm going to put it into this clothespin to use it as a swab paintbrush. And I have thankfully got my paint spread out there, but you'll quickly see that I realize I didn't put something under my page. So you'll not have to watch me hold this page while I get ingenious trying to find a piece of packaging to slide under there. I'll skip that part. So now that I have something to protect my page, I'm going to go ahead and swipe the paint on and cover up these words that I didn't want to leave on the page. You'll want to just keep starting on the leaf and then moving off the leaf so that your leaf doesn't move, so that you get a nice edge imprint around as you work your way around the circle of the leaf. Now that I have an even coat all the way around, I'm going to go ahead and lift off the leaf. What a nice print we got. So you'll notice that I went ahead over the words here on the right side of the leaf, and I can still read through because the acrylic paint can be spread thin enough to read through it. And I also think I'm going to go ahead and use my card swiping technique to spread the paint up above just to even out the page. Well, that just about does it. Let me just hold this closer so you can see how you can still read the words through the paint. I hope that your change in season is being brave and trying some new art techniques in your Bible. And if you've been stuck, that this is your opportunity to be blessed and move forward.